All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. We've been having a little bit of technical difficulties this morning, so I apologize for starting a few minutes late here. Good morning. Good to see everybody hopping on. All right. When you hop on, we'd love to have you put in the chat, say hello, tell us where you're calling in from, tell us what you had for breakfast. And yeah, so let me just start things off. Leslie is in the background here getting us live on Facebook and actually in the foreground. So looks like.
Oh, okay.
And all right, so Nick, good morning. How are you, Nick?
Hey, good morning, Joe. Doing really well. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. You're kind of doing the pinch hitter for Dr. Saunders today. Scott is on his way to Hawaii, I believe, for a family vacation / work trip, it sounds like. So he had, I think something happened with his flight where he wasn't able to make it today. But we were planning to have you on anyways. So excited to hear from you and dig into the brain a little bit and different topics that you've been working with in the past. So that'll be good stuff here. Just little housekeeping here. Good morning, everybody. If you are watching this live, you've got a Zoom software that we can interact together. We love to have interaction questions that you can ask. There's a Q&A button on the bottom of the software, or in the chat window, you can ask questions in there. Today we don't have the doctor with though, so we're not going to be able to give, well, we won't have as good of answers as typically as what Dr. Saunders would have regarding diabetes, health, and different things like that. Although we'll do our best to share what we know, what we've learned over the years, just working with the Diabetes Solution Kit and our various efforts in that regard. So we're going to get into some good stuff here. So Leslie, how are we doing?
We are good to go. We're on Facebook. We're live. So if you guys are watching there, say hello.
Awesome.
You can ask questions on Facebook too. So we're good.
All right. Well, very good. So let me introduce you guys to Nick Thomas. Nick has worked with us for, boy, I think he started about 5 years ago, roughly. Something
2014,
like
something like that.
6 years ago now, almost. All right. Yeah. So, and you did a little bit of works with your brother in a different industry, which is where you gained some of this knowledge that you're about to share with us. So we're excited to have Nick, and I'm just hand it over to you, Nick, and why don't you give us a little bit of an intro on what we're going to be talking about today?
Absolutely, and thank you. Well, thank you again for having me, and thank you for listeners and the viewers for joining today. You know, as you said, Joe, my name is Nick Thomas, and I've spent some time with the Alzheimer's and Dementia Services of Northern Indiana, learning and developing an understanding of what Alzheimer's and dementia are. I've obtained certifications in memory care and am a qualified memory care professional. And this is a topic that is hitting worldwide. Alzheimer's and dementia, the lifestyles that go along with that. And there's been a lot of change ultimately from what we knew 50 years ago about this disease to what we know today. So that's a little bit about what I'll be talking about. One key ingredient here is lifestyle change, and that's the most common thing that we know about this particular disease today.
Yeah, excellent. Well, you know, brain health is very much connected with diabetes, and you know, more and more medical professionals have been calling Alzheimer's and dementia basically a form of type 3 diabetes because of how sugar basically impacts, you know, the brain. And so, I mean, our brain needs fuel and energy and glucose basically to function. And so, but when there's too much, then all sorts of bad things can happen. So yeah, let's get into that, Nick. Talk about, like, you know, yeah, just start going into some deep detail here.
You bet. Well, again, to me, this is a very important topic, and one where the number of people living with and experiencing dementia in one form or another continues to increase. And some experts out there say that there are around 50 million people worldwide that are living with dementia today, and we can expect that number to nearly double about every 20 years. Some might call that an epidemic. before we get started, I'd like to just define a couple of terms, if that's all right. And the first one is just dementia. Dementia is it's an umbrella term for a set of symptoms, which includes impaired memory and thinking. Dementia is a term often used to describe cognitive decline of aging. Issues outside of Alzheimer's disease can cause dementia, and Alzheimer's disease is one of the most common forms of dementia. Estimates say 50 to 70% of people with cognitive decline have Alzheimer's disease. And with that, Joe, yeah, I'll dive in here. So take for what I'd really like to talk about and kind of compare and contrast today is how we saw Alzheimer's and dementia 50 years ago, and then just kind of show what we know about it today and how that's changed our thinking and how we can help people with that thought process. So, take for an example how we've looked at Alzheimer's and dementia historically. We'll say 50 years ago, there was a common conception that somebody who is aging or is older, or that just equaled senile. It was a normal part of aging in an older adult. We know now today that Alzheimer's disease is not inevitable, that not all older adults will develop Alzheimer's disease. Age is a significant risk factor, but brain pathology is not always the final factor, the final determining factor. Again, looking backwards, with aging comes extensive cell loss in the brain. That's what we thought 50 years ago. Today, we know that there's not, a significant cell loss in normal brain aging, but there is in abnormal brain aging. So we look at the disease today as minimal or selective cell loss. And, looking back again, brain, we had this conception that the brain just kind of sits back and deteriorates as we age, or that there's passive deterioration with aging. Brain aging, as we know it today, continually adapts and compensates and can learn and adapt to new insights even into our older years. There was a time where we thought that it was unknown or there were no known genetic risks for cognitive aging, but today we know that there are many complex and interacting factors for longevity and cognition. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And sort of finally, for my compare and contrast, I'll just leave with this. It was not always known about lifestyle risks that contributed to cognitive aging. Research shows that today that lifestyles can affect cognitive aging. One study I'd like to just point out, I did put this in the chat, and Leslie, if you want to share this again, as some people have added some new things in there, is the Pointer study. There is a study out there of professionals that are researching lifestyle changes, and they put it in this study called the Pointer study. It's happening worldwide. There is two separate reports. One is right here in the US, and then one is a worldwide study. So there is a link in the chat now. If anybody is interested in that, you can take a look and follow along with that research. But the concept here is fast forward 50 years. Research is showing us that overall, we're talking about lifestyle and how some lifestyle activities can be harmful and even promote brain aging at a faster pace. There is no known cure for Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia at this time, but there certainly are some things that we can do to reduce the risk of developing dementia and even delay its onset. And I'd like to talk a little about some of those now.
Great. Yeah. So that that link to the let's see, it's alz.org and the Pointer. Let's see, is that like a study that people can participate in or something?
Yes, it is. There is some research in a white paper that goes along. If you do some looking on that page as well, it's an impressive research done, again, kind of on lifestyles and how even certain areas have been able to diminish the effects of dementia, or at least the brain aging process by some degree, by making small lifestyle changes, some of which we're going to talk a little bit about here today.
Okay, cool.
So there's kind of six highlights I'll talk about. The heart is kind of the first one that I'd like to mention, and it plays a big role in whether you will have Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. For an example, if you have comorbidities, keeping blood pressure, cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, and obesity under control can reduce the impact of vascular dementia in particular. If you think back to a little bit ago, I had mentioned the umbrella term. So vascular dementia is under that umbrella term, but it causes memory loss in older adults, particularly in those with high risk of stroke due to obesity or diabetes. In the early stages, the condition causes cognitive difficulty with reasoning and judgment, and in later stages, memory is affected. But controlling conditions that affect heart health can slow the disease progression altogether. Physical activity is kind of another lifestyle change. So exercise obviously will stimulate the brain and can produce new neurons that thereby reduce cognitive decline. And exercise, of course, can also improve moods, reduce stress, and help protect your heart. But it helps memory and thinking through both direct and indirect means. The benefits of exercise come directly from its ability to reduce insulin resistance. And I think you talked about that a little bit ago, Joe, but reducing inflammation and stimulating the release of growth factors, the chemicals in the brain that affect the health of the brain cells and the growth of new blood vessels in the brain, and even the abundance of survival of new brain cells. This is all done through physical activity. So some of you might be asking, what should I do? How can I get started? Just start an exercise program. The amount of exercise a person needs is going to be different for everybody. It's important here. Dr. Saunders is not on the call. I'm not a doctor. You'd always probably want to consult your doctor before putting a regimen together, but start small. Even walking can make a big difference. So with Alzheimer's and dementia, one of the main highlights that you'll hear talked about, even in the Pointer study that we mentioned earlier, are social activity or engagement. So social activity increases mental activity and emotional connections to others, which can actually strengthen the pathways of memory. And social isolation not only increase the risk of dementia, but also increase the risk of hypertension, depression, or even coronary heart disease, which these are all risk factors.
Well, if we can talk about that a little bit.
So if you have family,
yeah, I mean that social component, like that's probably the scariest part of Alzheimer's for people that get it and for their family members, because we hear stories or we know people that have had it that you've spent several years with somebody and then all of a sudden over time they forget who you are, and it's just devastating. And so I had never heard that the more social interaction you have, the less likely that would happen. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, it really is. Joe, you mentioned kind of some of my involvement here in Indiana in working with my brother through a home care agency. And one of the things that I did for that agency is I was a home care consultant. And I would go and meet with families and people who are in the aging category who choose to live in their homes. And one of the biggest concerns that those people had for the most case was isolation. There was a lack of social activity or engagement on the aging person's part. And so they wanted to bring in a professional that could not only take care of their healthcare needs, but that could do some social activity or engaging with that individual. In a lot of cases, that can make a big difference for someone who is isolated in their home. Perhaps they're a lot of these people I'm going to talk about here momentarily are at the higher end of aging. I'd say 70s and 80s, for an example. So like you pointed out, Joe, they've lost a loved one, their spouse, their soulmate they've spent their whole life with is no longer with them. Children have their own lives going on, and so they're sometimes across the country and not able to get in touch with them or be with them like they used to be. Friends are experiencing some of the same things that they are. So their mobility, their ability to get out and do things is diminished. And so you could see a person sitting in their home day after day after day with little to no engagement. And so having a home care person come out and spend some time with them, not only taking care of their physical needs, but just having that social focal point for a day, a couple hours, whatever it was really important for them and made a huge difference.
Yeah.
This particular, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, like, my dad is in that situation because my mom passed away about 5 years ago, and he's 84 now and still lives at home by himself. But I'm like 5 hours away from him, so I can't just go over and see him. But thankfully, my sister is nearby, and he usually gets out and he's very active for for his age. He's in pretty good shape. But that's just an encouragement for all of us on the call right now. I'd say, like, think about, like, who do you know that maybe is easy to forget about, but would just, truly appreciate that you stop in once a week or something, or be intentional about, going and visiting others. I mean, it's good for them, but it's also good for us too. I mean, anytime that you're spending time with others, like, you realize, wow, this human connection really makes a difference. So yeah, start making a list, write down on paper, like, who are some people that maybe I should, put on my calendar to go visit once a week or once a month or something like that. And maybe you're in that situation where you want others to come visit you. And I don't know, any tips on that, Nick? Like, if you are lonely, how do you reach out? How do you let somebody know that you really, are just, because a lot of times you just don't want to be a burden on other people. I think people are afraid to feel like a burden. So what are some tips for people that are feeling isolated?
Yeah, actually, the tip that I would suggest is actually from someone like your perspective, Joe, knowing that somebody might be in isolation or experiencing some depression or just some disengagement, to be aware of those signs. Because the people that I consulted, oftentimes, just like you had mentioned, would say, I don't need this. I really don't. And everybody around them really knew and beneficial in a lot of ways. And so if you're asking, just be alert, like you said, make that list like you're talking about today. Be alert to the fact that there may be some needs in their future. Have that discussion with them. There's lots of resources out there for how to have that discussion with a loved one or somebody that might be needing this kind of help. But really, I would just say, if you have family or friends, get involved. Carve out the time to be around others. Go make that visit. If you can't do that, even a phone call helps in a big way. Call. Spend 10, 15, 20 minutes on the phone call and do that. This company that I worked for actually had a pretty new device. It looked a lot like an iPad, basically, but what it had on it was apps that were designed to engage the brain and work with social activity or engagement and just kind of work the brain muscle. So even if you can get over to to a loved one's home and work on a phone that they have or an iPad and get them a game or something, even if it's a card game, it's got them thinking about something other than nobody's around me, right?
Yeah.
But it will always help reduce their risks to have a little bit of a social activity or engagement. If you're going to church and you can grab somebody, bring them with you. I know not everybody worships the same place, but I mean, that's one opportunity. If there's another public activity that you're going to out to eat or out to dinner, but you got to be intentional about it. You could do something like a Sunday pledge, have a pledge to have, dinner or something at home with your family member and bring that one lost soul, along with, if that's the case. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's very good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's do a little housekeeping here. So we had a couple of questions come in. One was whether or not these webinars are stored elsewhere and recorded so you can access them later. And thanks for that question, Brian. Yes, absolutely. If our main website that we use to promote this webinar is called bartonwebinar.com. And then if you go to that page, there's a link to our YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel, I believe, is called Barton Publishing TV. Is that right, Leslie? Does that ring a bell? But if you just search,
I'll look it up and I'll post it.
Yeah. So if you go to YouTube and search diabetes webinar and Barton, you'll find us. And so then once you get to our YouTube channel, you can subscribe. and click the bell on our channel, I believe, and then you'll get notified anytime that a new video is posted. But you can also find an archive of any of the other webinars that we've done in our YouTube channel. And we've been doing this for every week now for over 6 months. So there's a lot of videos stored up there that with a lot of great topics that we've covered, and we mostly are, pretty close to diabetes related, like insulin or metformin or cinnamon or artificial sweeteners and all sorts of things like that. And today's topic is a little bit like not directly related to diabetes, but at the same time, like I said at the beginning, type 3 diabetes is totally what they're calling Alzheimer's and other brain-related diseases, because there is such a connection, a strong connection of really the same things that cause type 2 diabetes is what causes Alzheimer's and dementia. So if you can work on type 2 diabetes, and work at reversing your symptoms for that and getting your blood sugars and your A1Cs at healthy levels, then you're doing a lot of good and making progress in preventing brain issues from happening in the future. And maybe you've already noticed mental decline, and just want to encourage you that you can find improvement even though you've maybe started to have some signs and symptoms of memory loss or different things like that. So just a word of encouragement for you to use the Diabetes Solution Kit, use the phase 1, phase 2 part of the plan, limiting your carbs to under 20 grams per day. And then, until you get your blood sugar and A1C levels to a healthy level. And so all of that is found in our Diabetes Solution Kit, which is found on bartonwebinar.com. So that's a little bit of housekeeping there. Let's see here. Let me look at, do we have anything else, Leslie, that is housekeeping related that came in? Any questions? We did have one. Krish had a question about an order replace. And so Krish, if you can contact our customer support, because we're not doing customer support during a live webinar here, but if you email our support team, that's probably the best way, and just send an email to support@bartonpublishing.com. and someone will be able to help you out and find your order there. You can also call our support phone number at 888-356-1146. And I believe that number is also on bartonwebinar.com. So, all right, let's get back to it here, Nick. Really good information. And yeah, let's keep going here. Maybe we can talk about some more strategies for what's worked, what helps with this.
Sure. One of the things that you kind of talked about in your housekeeping here just a moment ago was related to diets, right? Diets play a huge impact on everything within our body, not only just the brain, but the type 2 diabetes you had mentioned. And so following a healthy diet, there are some things we should and should not eat. And so eating fruits and vegetables, nuts, using the olive oil instead of or over butter, eating fish regularly, adding herbs and spices instead of salt, and limiting red meat can all be associated with reducing the risk of dementia, among other things. It can help you manage and maintain your weight levels. It can help reduce blood sugar levels. And you can probably talk more about that too, Joe, but processed foods with high fats and trans fats are associated with an increased risk of dementia. I know the Diabetes Solution Kit talks quite a bit about that topic as well.
Yeah, I know inflammation is a big part of it. And so when you reduce your carbs are really inflammatory. And so that's one of the big reasons why, we recommend low inflammation and low carbohydrates. And so we had a couple of questions that come in related to that. And Steve, I see your questions here. So thoughts on honey for coffee. And so, one of the things, and you can find this in previous webinars, even last week, I think we talked about it, natural versus artificial sweeteners. And Dr. Saunders talks about how, so natural sweeteners are better than artificial sweeteners for sure, but anything that's sweet is going to trigger an insulin response. And so when your body consumes something that's sweet, your pancreas releases insulin. And really, diabetes is an insulin issue, not so much a blood sugar issue. Blood sugar is more of a response or a symptom of the insulin. But insulin resistance is what happens when your cells become resistant to the insulin, and insulin is what your cells use to use sugar, take the sugar out of the blood and put it into your cells for energy. And so when your cells become insulin resistant, the blood sugar, or the sugar remains in the blood. That's why you have high blood sugar. But also when your body tastes that sweet and you have that insulin, like you've got too much insulin in your body as well. And that's what is also causing problems. So the goal is to keep your insulin production as low as possible. And so when you're adding honey or stevia, or even sugar alcohols, anything sweet to your coffee or to your foods, you're going to have more insulin production. Dr. Saunders talks about how fat really does not elicit an insulin response. Fat doesn't have any, it's not sweet. And most proteins are the same way, although, so what we promote, with the 20 grams per day is very similar to the ketogenic diet, which is 70 to 80% healthy fats, 15 to 20% proteins, and like 5% carbs. And most of your carbs you're going to want to be getting from vegetables, maybe a little bit of, low glycemic index fruits, like some berries, but that's really, minimal. And I mean, you have to look at this like this is like a prescription. You're prescribing yourself 20 grams or less of carbs per day, and it's for the purpose of finding breakthrough success in your health. And so I hope that answers your question. Honey for coffee, honey is better, but just be careful. Anytime you get sweeten things up, you're gonna produce more insulin. So. And then Krish asked, is agave syrup better than honey? So again, I think, they're both natural sources. So the positive about natural sweeteners is they don't trick your pancreas in a sense. They're not artificial. There's different side effects that affect your brain by those artificial sweeteners. But at the same time, anything sweet, even agave syrup, even honey, they're both going to trigger insulin. So it's best to basically, slay the dragon of sweets like a boss, and try to overcome that. And if you need a little bit, definitely honey or agave syrup is better than stevia, or not stevia, but like Splenda or sucralose or Sweet and Low or anything like that. So.
I would just encourage everybody to go back and watch the webinar that we did last week, because we really covered a lot of this information, and it was really, really good. So Dr. Saunders, of course, is full of a lot of trials with people on different sugars and things like that. So check that out. I did post the link to the Barton Publishing Barton webinar, I believe it's called Barton Publishing Webinars. But there is a link in the chat, so you can go there right after this and check that out and watch some of those other ones, because there are some really, really good, there's a lot of good information on our YouTube channel. So, and don't forget to subscribe, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. Ernie had a question. We were talking about, activities for your brain. So reading is good, games, going to church. What are some other activities like doing Sudoku, different crossword puzzles, things like that? What are some other activities that we can be doing?
It's not how big it is. It's about how often you do it. I mean, the key concept really here is use it or lose it. So if you are sitting at home on a regular basis and you're not engaging your brain, it's like going to the gym but never lifting a weight and trying to build muscle, right? So if you're not using it, you will lose it. It's not how big it is or how in-depth it is all the time necessarily. Just engagement is the key, having that activity. So yeah, reading a book, playing a new game, having a debate with a neighbor, whatever it is, just encouraging some thought process, some activity to get the wheels turning is really the most important part.
Well, this time of year with the political scene picking up intensity, there's always opportunity for a good political debate, right?
That's right.
I don't usually shy away from those. My wife doesn't appreciate when I do that, but I'll just tell her, hey, it's good for your brain. So
one of the things that I have loved to do with both of my grandparents who or grandmothers who are now both deceased, but I gave each of them a memory book. And it was something that we sat with them and filled out together. And so it was, tell me about your first date with your spouse. What did he drive? What did you do? And kind of walking through some things if they're able to. But that way you're also getting to spend time with them and you have something that you can keep forever. So if they're able to do that, I would do that now. But that's a really good way to kind of jog your memory and it's exciting. It's exciting to learn from them as well. So take advantage of that while you can.
Oh,
that's next. Can you hear me?
Froze a little bit, but I think you're back.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I must have a bad connection here a little bit. Excuse me for that. I was agreeing with Leslie, though, that as a home care consultant in the home dealing with a number of people and a variety of different types of dementia, it's not always the case where someone who can't remember what you said 10 minutes ago doesn't remember what they did as a child, or can't remember they can remember all those wonderful times that they had on the farm as a kid growing up, or their job that they love to do, or things they've done with their children. So the photo book is something that caregivers through this company that I worked with did quite a lot of. And we actually called it something else. We called it person-centered care, really getting to know the life story of that individual and helping them to remember the things that they could. And oftentimes music can also be a really big way to encourage brain stimulation and just bring out the best in people. You've probably seen it on online or elsewhere where people have no recent memories, no ability to retain new information, but can remember how to play a guitar or a violin or a piano and sing like, just something amazing. And so those are all things that you could do if that's, an interest to you. Playing a musical instrument obviously is going to challenge your brain as a new activity or a new song that you're learning or any of that sort of things.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. My dad, like I said, he's 84, sharp as a tack, and I think I inherited a little bit of this from him. But he whistles or sings pretty much 23 hours a day, it seems like. So, but no, he remembers all these old songs, and one of my sons does it too. I always know when he's home because I hear whistling in the house and stuff. But yeah, instruments, that's awesome advice. And I was just thinking, while we're here, seems how we have this chat feature, what would be a good question from a memory book, Leslie, that we could ask and have people write and type in here? It'd be kind of fun, like first date or first job or something like that.
Oh, there's so many. One of the things that I loved, this just sticks out to me, just asking about the first date, because there's so much information that comes out of it. So I think that would be a great one. I found out what kind of car my grandpa drove, where he picked her up, where they went. And I think they went to some type of a game, if I remember, like a basketball game or something. I don't know. I just think there's a lot of neat things that come from that. So maybe a first date memory.
Let's do it. Go ahead and put in the chat. Give us a little memory of your first date, how old you were and what you did or where you went. That'll be kind of fun. So good audience participation. But Nick, back to you. So we've got about 10 minutes or so left here. Try to shoot for around 45 minutes per week on our webinars here. But yeah, you want to kind of bring us down the home stretch here?
Yeah, I think, we talked about a lot here. There really is a lot that goes into that. And we could elaborate on each one of those highlights that I touched on quite extensively and go into a deeper dive of that. But the main point here, I just want to reiterate, is that the research is showing us that Alzheimer's and dementia, even diabetes and some of the other comorbidities that we talked about, we're talking about lifestyle and how some lifestyle activities can be harmful and, again, even promote brain aging at a faster pace. So there's not a cure. That's something to be alarmed about, in my opinion. You know, if we live the wrong way today and we get a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's disease, we can't reverse that, not today anyway. But there are some things we can do leading up to in our earliest years. Right now is the best time to start, if no other time, that can help us, that can reduce the risk of developing dementia and delay any sort of onset that might be taking place there. And it doesn't have to be really challenging. This is, this is pretty basic stuff. You can take it to any level you want. But getting out for a walk, once a day or once a week, it doesn't matter. Start someplace and build up from it. Try to make, incremental eating habits a little better change there for yourself. If that's a problem for you, maybe it's not a problem for anybody listening. But if it is a problem for you, make some changes. Kit has some ideas there. If you don't want to go there, go online. Do a Google search. Go to your library and rent or check out rather a cookbook. For some ideas. There's resources all over out there. If you have a friend that's in a physical activity of any kind, going to the gym or water aerobics or standing behind a chair and doing leg lifts, as a start. That's something that is. If there's somebody out there, social activity and engagement is really important to all of us. On quite a few different levels, but ultimately plays a big part in our risk for having dementia. So reach out to somebody. If you're the one that needs reaching out to, think of a creative way that you could involve yourself in some activity if there's not somebody immediately available or close enough to you to come by. So
something that I find really helpful is, I was just having this conversation with my sister yesterday. I can get really bored doing the same type of fitness routines. Just kind of my personality. I just don't like to do the same thing all the time. But if I can tell myself today's goal is to move, then I'm open to whatever I want to do for the day. But if I know I need to move and that's it, whether it's a walk or a run or swimming or whatever, it feels less like a workout and something, that feels overwhelming, and it sounds more like something fun. So that helps anyone else. It works for me.
I agree with that, Leslie. And one of the things that I find really interesting and has been really helpful for me personally, I'm a father of 4 young children under the age of 15, and sometimes it's really challenging to, prepare that healthy meal, to get to the gym every day or whatever the case might be. And so one thing that I did to sort of motivate myself is I bought an Apple Watch. And on the Apple Watch, what do they say? 10,000 steps a day is the Heart Association's, kind of meter or gauge of what you should have every day. So, if it's 8 o'clock at night and I've already eaten supper and I only got, 7,000 steps for the day or something like that, that's my cue to take the dog for a walk or kind of get those final bit of steps. So again, this doesn't have to be real physical work. It could be a walk, and it's all useful to us. So
Awesome.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Some good stories coming in here on some first dates. So very cool. Hope everyone's enjoying those as well. Ernie, you had a question.
I might not be able to see them, Joe, because they're coming into the panelists.
Oh, it's okay.
So we can read them.
All right. Leslie, you get to read a couple then.
Okay. Oh, these are good. Okay, so Ernie says, I was 16. Her name was Moira, my high school sweetheart. We went to a hangout spot, and believe it or not, kissed, sat on a tomb in a cemetery. What? Ernie!
That is romantic, huh?
Goodness. Oh my goodness. That's pretty funny though. Your high school sweetheart. Oh, that is hilarious. Okay. Let me see here. I have some other questions here from Ernie. Let's see. This is from Dave. First wife, 18 years old, summer camp. She worked in the kitchen. I was a counselor. I invited her to sit with my unit at campfire. We took a walk in the woods after lights out. And then there are 3 dots. So I can assume what might be after that. Or I just can't open it any further. But we'll just let everyone's imagination just go. That's good though, Dave. Thank you for sharing these, you guys. This is great.
Grace took a long drive into the mountains, got out at places to breathe clean air and walk in the snow. That sounds very good.
That sounds great right now.
Yeah. I shared mine. My first date involved the movie Memphis Belle, dinner at Baker's Square, and a totally botched attempt at a first kiss. That's all we need to say about that. So
that's funny. That's good. Oh, these are good, guys. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I didn't put my in there. Oh.
Ernie had a question about what does diabetes reversal mean? Honestly, is it management and control? Leslie, make a note of that for next week or the following for Dr. Saunders. I think that would be good to dive into.
Okay.
What does it actually mean to reverse diabetes? So that's not something I feel real comfortable answering myself too confidently without Dr. Saunders. So.
Well, you could, but we want the medical perspective from Dr. Saunders also.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So Nick, you shared some great tips. I was taking notes, and just as a recap, let me know what I missed here, but like some of the most important things for taking care of your brain is social activity and not allowing yourself to be isolated, and thinking about like who else out there is maybe isolated that you could go and visit and do something with, and take them out for a walk or go out to eat or something. That's so important. Going to church together or something, going to a senior center, doing activities. Activities like games, puzzles, different things like that. Cooking, I think the act of cooking, not only you usually eat healthier when you cook your own food, but the activity of preparing something is also good for your brain because you're following a system and a recipe. Eating fresh foods was something, eating nutritiously. I think, that there's another diet called paleo, and the concept behind that is only eating foods that were here 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, like foods that come from the earth, not foods that are processed or manufactured or combined like with chemicals and things like that, but things that you'll find on the outside of your grocery stores and your fruits and veggies section and things like that. So high nutrient density is important to get to your body. A lot of times you develop health problems because you're missing key nutrients and minerals. And so that's honestly why we have the supplements that we promote, Synachroma, Nervala, and turmeric. Those 3 have key nutrients and minerals that most of us miss in the food that we eat. So some other things, Nick, that you talked about is going for walks, going to the gym, doing new, water aerobics, things like that, finding activities. I would think having like a dog probably, do you have any ideas on pets, Nick? How does that affect brain care?
Well, it can play a huge part in social isolation. And so again, kind of relating back to that other company I worked with, pets there's lots of studies out there, by the way, on this, and you can just do a simple Google search or whatever to get some tips on it. But in the company that I was serving, pets in the home more often would have a happier person in there, right? So somebody to care for, someone to love, someone to feed, a responsibility, somebody who's depending on them. It gave them a purpose, and it just made their whole outcome. Comparing that person with nobody coming to their home and no pet in the home. It's amazing what a pet and an animal, can really do to somebody who's needing some purpose in their life right now.
And an
I'm
opportunity.
not sure if that answered your question, but yeah.
No, that's great.
Absolutely.
What were you saying, Leslie?
I was just going to say, and a good opportunity for some exercise, probably.
Yeah, right.
Unless it's a
Yeah.
cat, but you can't, I suppose you can walk your cat.
So I got to show you something. You guys are going to like this. I went for a walk this morning with my wife and my dog and my cat. My cat joined us, and I'm going to show you the video here because it's hilarious.
Seriously?
All right. Hopefully you can see this.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Just out on a morning walk with the cat.
That is awesome. And the fact that I just said that is weird.
It is weird. I'm like, I know there's a reason I'm gonna need that I'm taking this video of my cat, but I don't know of any other cats that go for walks with people. But I thought
that is awesome.
And Nick, you also mentioned music and playing an instrument or listening to music, singing along, things like that. All good stuff. So excellent job, Nick. Thanks for sharing. And I know this has been helpful for a lot of people. And yeah, we're gonna, we hope that you guys will join us again next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central. And don't know exactly what our topic is going to be, but there'll always be something entertaining and insightful and informative on it. So go to bartonwebinar.com. If you're watching the recording of this, you can register to join us live. And we love to get your questions. And we appreciate everybody that was on the call today and that watched on Facebook. And yeah, Nick, any closing thoughts or words of encouragement?
I just really appreciate being here and being able to talk on this topic. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I mean, it's such a robust topic, and there's so many different facets and avenues that we could go down. So I would sure enjoy another opportunity if there's ever a more detailed explanation of Alzheimer's and dementia, what it looks like, how the brain ages, any of that sort of thing for the population that you serve, Joe, through your platform at Barton Publishing. I'd sure like that opportunity. I think I'd like to just thank all the viewers and listeners for staying on and all your great questions. It's been a pleasure being here today.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think I'd love to have you back, Nick.
You're on mute, Joe.
What's that?
You were on mute.
Oh, I'd love to have you back on, Nick, with Dr. Saunders here as well, because I know the two of you back and forth would be awesome together. So we'll definitely get that set up. And yeah, we have some great comments and notes of appreciation from people here, Nick. So thanks so much. Thanks, Leslie, as always, for keeping us on track here and the tech side of things and everything. So yeah, great call, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a blessed day. All right, take care. See you next time.
Thank you all.
Bye.